You take that down. Hi, good afternoon, and happy Thanksgiving in advance. This is the first of two presentations on updates from our national meeting, which was in Denver, Colorado, between November 4th and 9th. And if you go to the AAMC website, they have the town hall, 5 thought leader presentations, and also the president and the chair's speeches are up online, and it's www.aamc.org/2011_annual_meetings. But if you get onto the AAMC website, click onto meetings, it's really user-friendly. But there are a lot of presentations that are up there that are actually quite good. So today we're going to have 4 speakers, and I think most of you know most of them. The first one, I think we'll have Martin go first. So the first one's going to be Martin Hunter, who we have to welcome if you don't know him, and I just recently met him. He's new to Sinai as of January as the Associate Registrar, and he oversees the registration for both the medical school and the graduate school, and he comes to us from the UCLA School of Medicine, where he was the Associate Registrar there before coming here. In addition, we have Dr. Valerie Parkas, who I think almost everybody knows, who's the Associate Dean for Admissions. She's been in the admissions office as the Associate Dean for the last 2 years, and she's been intimately involved with clinical skills training for our medical students for maybe 8 years, ran the Art and Science of Medicine 1 course, and has really spearheaded the longitudinal clinical experience and the students' interact experience. And then Jess Maysonet has been in the admissions office. She's the Assistant Director of Admissions. She's been there for 7 years, and I knew her before and her mother through the Department of Medicine. And then Dr. Muller is going to come late from the meeting and present some updates as well. The next AAMC update is December 21st, and we do have some other speakers in between. The schedule is on the table. So, Martin? Audio taping, so don't mind.
No, I don't mind. All right, sure. Hi, everyone. I was introduced as the Associate Registrar. I'm Marty Hunter. I work with Nelson Pay. You probably all know Nelson. He's the actual registrar. And I went to the meeting. It was really good. My very first meeting for the overall national, all the information that was the AAMC has to offer for all different areas. And when I went to a lot of sessions because I like to learn different things, but the ones that I'm going to present today are the ones that I found that impacted me as a registrar, and I thought you might be interested in that as well. So the 3 sessions I'm going to talk about is the VSAS session. There's an update, and that just means the Visiting Student Application Service. The second one I went to that I thought was important was the ARIS update, and that's the residency. So our 4th years when they go through the residency process, they came up with some updates. And the MB&E, that's where the USMLE, the Step 1, 2, and 3 are taken by our students, and there's a little bit of an update, not much about that. So let's start off with the VSAS. Like I said, it's the Visiting Student Application Service. It's an application the AAMC created about 4 years ago to make it easier for medical students to apply for electives away from their home. Okay? And it's only for LC&E accredited students. So, and usually it's there are 4th year students doing their senior electives. So with VSAS, they have actually 2 types of institutions. The first one is considered a host institution, and they're the only ones that actually they receive and process from other schools. And the other type is a home institution, and all they do is process their school students' information to go somewhere else. Now, Sinai, we're actually both a home and a host institution, which is great. When I was at UCLA, we were only a home, and I don't know why we were never a host, but anyway. It was interesting when I got here that we were a host and got to see exactly how it worked a lot better than I did just doing our own students. So for VSAS at Mount Sinai, just to give you a little bit of history, we as a home institution, we assist our students by basically getting our transcripts ready if they need to have a transcript uploaded. If they have an immunization form that we have on file, we'll send that as well. We can upload that for them, or they can do it themselves. So that's just basic information for us. Now, this is the more important, which obviously Camilla, she knows there's a lot of work involved when it comes to being a host institution, because we're the ones that determine eligibility for students coming from outside to here, and once we make that process and push it on, then the clerkships can decide if they want to accept or deny that particular student. So this is what Sinai actually requires, and it's a lot different than what UCLA would require. No drug testing, which I forgot to put on there, and then New York infection control training. Sometimes some schools need we need the copy of the BLS card, and then MASFIT training is only for Amherst right now. So they're the only ones required right off the bat. They need to know that they've had the MASFIT training. And so like I said, we only verify the eligibility of the student, and the clerkships make the final decision, and they can reject or they can accept. Now, what I learned from some of the stuff at the meeting, the VSAS is now in its 4th year. And there's 94 host institutions. When they first started, there were 7. So it's gradually grown. But there's 135. I'm surprised that not more have gone aboard that particular, going into being a host. And then there's some of the things we went over, some software enhancements, and all that did was make it easier for us, for students and for us, to break it down by student and see what type of information we want to see. What clerkship is it? What time is it? What particular date, all that kind of stuff. So if you see the system right now, it's kind of limited. They want to make it better and easier for all of us. So the impact for us in terms of Mount Sinai, here's what some of the lessons that were learned they've learned from home and host institutions. Now I brought this up because this was one of the first ones they mentioned, and it was so cool because it's Nelson who brought it up. And what Nelson had asked when he called up Melissa, her name is, and he said, we have when a student gets accepted, a lot of times they apply to different, the same clerkship, but different times and different dates and all that sort of thing. So if a clerkship accepts someone, what happens with the other 9 applications they put out? Well, what happens is they just sit there. And Nelson's idea was once they've been accepted by a program, the other ones should somehow automatically become rejected. It's not, because they've already got one, they're not going to do 2 of the same clerkship at the same site. And so because it's a lot of work, and it just sits on our queue, and it's long, and it's just involved. And so, like I said, it's involved same clerkship with different dates. So they're taking this to heart, and when I introduce myself, they say, oh, Nelson, and that he's the one who brought it up, and that's what they're going with. So I have to tell Nelson when he gets back. And the other things they mentioned, they're also starting an expansion project with the osteopathic students. Right now, it's just our type of students, the allopaths. And they're just doing a pilot phase, because we have here it's important in science because we get quite a few osteopathic students that want to come, but they have to do it all paper-wise. They can't do it via VSAS, and it's not as easy. So they're trying to see how that works. And then something else they brought up was the Global Health Learning Opportunities. And this is to facilitate a web-based system for people from other countries to come here and for us to go there. And so this is also in a pilot stage, and they're working on some schools, I think maybe 7 from the U.S., and there's quite a few from international schools that are trying to see how this would work, so make it all electronic. And so I think this would help out with Jeanette and what she does with the visiting students that come. So it makes everything being electronic. And here's the U.S. and international medical schools. So are there any questions about that? Yes.
I'm sorry. So a couple things. So HIPAA is not required for students?
Oh, for us, yeah.
Okay, but not for all schools? They do it when they get here?
They do it, more or less, they do it when they get here.
Okay. So you wouldn't accept it from another school?
No. We tend to do our own. Because every school, because I've looked at the HIPAA from here and versus UCLA, there's just about the same. There's just a few little differences. We all have our own little requirements and stuff.
And then the registrar's office as the home institution uploading all that information, or do the students have to upload their own CV? In other words, is someone filtering to make sure that
they do it on their own. So when the students decide to apply somewhere, they upload. They have the capability to do that. Like I said, for us to help sometimes, we have some information they don't have a copy of, and we want to make sure, and we can help them out a little bit that way. But for the most part, it's all on the student to upload and to apply to the particular clerkship.
Your comment that only Elmhurst requires master testing, I think outdated. Sinai has realized that we are completely and totally out of compliance with JACO's mandates about this, and they you out of compliance. So you may wish to check whether the institution wishes you to enforce that master testing at the same institution.
Well, some students actually, they do send the information anyway, their math fits, but not all. Like UCLA, that was real, they had to do it every single year, and so those students would more or less, they would send it in because they see math fit, and but like you said, for the most part, they don't, unless they're applying to.
The sign, I realize they should be doing what UCLA did, which everybody should be yearly.
Exactly, starting from first year.
They want you to help them.
Add that to our requirement list.
Yes.
Right.
I don't know, that's paper, I presume it is.
We actually require it of all students going on the ward, so it's only Elmhurst requires that we give them proof.
Exactly. Yes.
Currently, it's verified by the other school that the student has it. If they don't verify it, we don't accept it. So we do require it, it's just we don't require a hard copy.
Right. But Elmhurst, they do require it. So.
Do we charge the students for their visiting rotations here, either U.S. or international?
It's all done through the VSAS. I'm not sure exactly how I know with the foreign international students, they do pay. And when they do their rotations here, but in terms of VSAS, they have to pay an application fee. And we have to pay $500 per year in order to use the software. So I'm assuming that they have to pay. But I don't know how much it is.
On the first day, they pay $140.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Payable to Jeanette for the international students are paying a lot more?
Yeah, a lot more. What is it, Jeanette?
140.
No, I mean for the international, it's like $1,000 per now, isn't it?
Commercial is 1,000 for reflected, $500 processing fee. As of January 2012, it was 2,000 and 1,000.
Right.
1,000 and 1,000.
1,000 processing fee.
You're going to ask the Bob question where that money goes? No.
Quite a bit.
Because that right where it should go. Well, I mean, I get a lot of inquiries in the EME side of, the administration putting a lot of pressure on the clinical department for all the attending to make this, to cover their nuts in terms of their salary, and even for the residents, the people are saying, well, why should these residents, I don't get paid for it, and, the dean is killing us about this stuff, and so I assume that one day you will get pressure by the clinical department to reimburse them for the time that their faculty members are paid because of the pressure they're getting from senior leadership.
And Scott, there is not an electronic model for residents taking rotations elsewhere, correct? It's done individually on paper with each department will be different?
No, it's done through the organization, but we don't charge money for it. Yeah, thank you, Doug.
Okay, well, the next session that I went to is the ERA update. And what ERA stands for is Electronic Residency Application Service. And something disappeared. Well, I put them out of order. But just to give you some background, the ADTS is the Applicant Document Tracking System. This is for the students to view what they've submitted to ERA. And so what the enhancements they mentioned for 2012 would make it more user-friendly to them in order to access it. Right now it's not as fine-tuned as the students would like, and for as well as us. I think Shashi would attest to that. Other things they mentioned were the deadline changes to the match week, as well as the match week, deadlines for ERIS and for the MSPE, and then the match week changes. And I'll mention all of that as we could go along. The first thing is the first timeline change on the ERIS actually opens up when programs can actually get access to this. It's open on September 15th this year of 2012, and that's a change from September 1st. They moved it. And then the MSPE, that's the Dean's letter, it's released it used to be on November 1st, and now it's been pushed up, so our timeline has made it, definitely it's going to affect the Student Affairs Office I'm sure they'll talk more about this as well. But in terms of the match week. I can explain. It's hard for this is really tough. I think we're all going to be struggling with this. But they've called it SOAP now instead of match week. It's called the SOAP, and it's called Supplemental Offer and Acceptance Program. And just to give you the background of our match week procedure, I'm just going to give you some dates that how it used to work. So on Mondays, the students were informed whether they matched or not. And so we also got the list. So if they didn't match, we contacted the student, had them come into the student affairs office, and we'd work around helping them find a program. So that's what the scramble is called for unmatched students. Faculty and staff will assist them. And then on Wednesday, if necessary, the scramble will continue. Most part, we find clerk's residency program for them on Tuesday, but if it has to be, we have on Wednesday as well. And then on Thursday, the actual day for the ceremonies, the fun part. So now how they've changed it with the SOAP, so this is Match Week 2012. So on Monday, the programs received their SOAP applications, and all that basically means unmatched students who are eligible to participate begin the search process. So they'll be coming into there'll be contacts come in, and they can still use our computers, and we can still provide the support. And they call this round one, and it begins at noon on Monday. And what round one means is that they're allowed to, there'll be a list of all the programs online, and they can start submitting their information. It's a different system, and they can upload all that and send it to those particular programs. And this whole process, round one, continues through Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, it ends at, we were told specifically, at 11:59 a.m. it ends. Eastern. That's a good question. I assume it's Eastern time. Yeah. Well, it's good for us. Not good for UCLA. That's 9 a.m. And so at noon, the first offers are actually sent to the applicants. I don't remember what the N was for, but so once they've given the applications, they have they have 2 hours to make a decision. If they dilly-dally and don't make a decision, then it's null and void, and it goes to the next person on their preference list for that particular program. So, and one of the issues that was brought up is like, what if they took the first thing that came, but something else better came along later, but once they've signed on, they've already signed their contract at this point, and they have to go to that particular, that's one of the big drawbacks. We were all the different faculty and staff are mentioning actually at this particular session. So, if you dilly-dally and wait for the good thing to come along, you might not ever get it. So it's a catch-22, isn't it? So on Wednesday, it still continues. Round 2 will begin, and that's at noon. And then at 3 p.m., the second round of offers are put out. And then the second offers end at 5 p.m., and it's end for the day. And then on Thursday, they start rounds 3 and 4, and it's just amazing how much they've done for this particular week. And they make offers every 3 hours. They last. The last offers are at 5 p.m. again. And then on Friday, we start the next round, 9 a.m. There's rounds 6, 7, and 8. So if there's still anything left at that point. And then at noon, which I thought was kind of strange, noon is the match day ceremonies, but the last offers can expire at 5 p.m. that day. Okay. And one thing that I was brought up and that Dr. Friedman had asked me was, what about the application cost? Well, they give you, I think it's the first round is like 30 applications you could submit to the system. Now, if you decide you want to send your application to 9, like surgery, then that's considered part of your 9, even though it's only one particular area. So if you use it all up on that one, it doesn't mean that for surgery I can use surgery, I can use all the different areas to go up to my 30. So they have to be careful. If they go over the 30 on the first day, then they have to start paying the application fee for each particular application after that point. Now, round 2, they think it's like round 10 more they'll give you, and around 3, 4 through 10 through 9, they'll give you 5 more. So I think it's around 42 to 45 total applications they allow you for free, I guess. And after that, you start paying for additional applications that you submit to the system. So kind of it's stressful enough as it is, and to me this makes it a little bit more stressful. But this is only maybe a year thing. Who knows if it really dive bombs? But we'll see. Now, in terms of the registrar, the impact for us, they mentioned to us that we have to recertify the students that are eligible for the match. Right before, like in September, we would send our certification list to Shashi and all that, and so the students could send all their information to Eris. And that was it. That was the part that we did until we actually got the match list, and then Nelson would, and he would submit it to all the various people that needed it. So now, right before the week before the match process, we have to recertify again, which I think is not a bad thing, and we all discussed that. So if someone hasn't met the qualification, the requirements to graduate and to March, then we can take them out of it and go from there. So I think that's actually a good part. It's not really all that big of a deal for us. Now, that's for the Student Affairs Office. Now, that's a whole different story. And at this point, I'm glad I'm not in Student Affairs for when it comes to this particular thing. There's so many drastic changes to this particular process. And the reason why they changed it is they wanted a level playing field for all students. And what that means, when I was at UCLA, we had some high-end faculty. They would come and help out at Match Week, at Scramble, and they would call, use their name, use their influence, or well, not influence, but their status, and call another program and say, hey, my student wants to come, he's from UCLA, and they would get in that way. So that is what they want to eliminate by having the SOAP process. So the faculty can't call up other program directors in order to get advantage for their students. They can still help, it's just they are no longer allowed to contact, but I don't know how they're going to police that. So I guess we'll cross that bridge when it comes to that. But seeing as we're signing, we're not going to have that many to worry about anyway. So now the last one is just the NBME. It's just the National Board of Medical Examiners update. There's some issues they brought up. That it was actually one of the most boringest ones I've gone to at this meeting, because they discussed about this kind of stuff, like the security. Like they're worried that they're going to share information, so students are studying, and then it's called the optimal test. I don't know if that's a database or a website or whatever, but they've been fined for trying to reconstruct the actual content of step 1 or 2. I can't remember which one it was. So that's really a little bit of security. That's the only problem. In terms of the USMLE, there's not many changes. The minimum scores are not likely to change until 2014. And then step 1, the last time it was increased to 188 was in 2009, and in step 2, CK, the last time it was increased was in 2010. That's not that long ago. So, and that's what they talked about. They talked about residency as well. Some of the different things. It's not really any changes. They just wanted to update of what their particular they're doing. So, anyway.
Two things. So, they made no mention of any changes to step 2CS?
There are going some changes, but I wasn't familiar with, other than in terms of the registrar, with the set scores, and I just know if they pass or whatever, but they are changing some of the rules for exactly during 2012. It's going to go in effect next year.
And then why with SOAP did they not use the residency model where the student selects and ranks, and then the program is ranked, and then they do a best fit? Why is it this insane, rolling every couple of hours as opposed to that model, which has somehow worked?
Well, that's a very good question. I'm not sure what the rationale of.
I think they would have to write new code every time for the match. I don't think the computers can handle that kind of matching on a 3-hour time.
Exactly, all at once.
But see, it wouldn't be 3 hours. You would just get the best fit. Like
but this is an electronic version of when you were alcohol. Midnight, you start getting the phone call. Right? And then you have to play Russian roulette. When they take this one, or they take the you took the first one.
So now they've spread it over a whole week, kind of thing.
I'm not up to date. The last time I looked at the residency matching program in New York State and in the tri-state area, like these matches, there were always unmatched medicine, pediatrics, psychiatry programs. Always. Massively unmatched. Is that still true? No. Not true. Wow. So that has changed as a result of more students, international students, Caribbean. What?
Cap on the DME budget.
Huh?
Cap on the number of slots and increase in
Decrease. Right.
Exactly.
Well,
Well, you're welcome.
Sorry, we're recording.
Do I need this?
Yeah, otherwise we don't get any recording.
Okay. No, that's okay. Okay. Hey guys. So Jess and I are going to just give some updates from some of the sessions about admissions. There were a number of sessions. There were sort of content sessions like update on MCAT, update on AMCAS, and then there were a number of town hall type sessions, which are less content but sort of more where admissions officers and directors are sort of thinking and what they're sort of what's out there. So we're going to talk a little bit about both types of sessions. So this was a very content-driven session that we both went to, really on the MCAT. There were, for the 2011 year, there were 85,000 scores released. 75,000 of them were unique examinees. So those numbers sort of blew me away, despite having done this for a number of years. It seemed overwhelming to me. 65,000 of those 85,000 were first attempt, 10,000 were second attempt, and 500 were third attempt. So a lot of people taking the MCATs. Of those numbers in 2011, 34,000 of them were Caucasian, 6,000 of them were self-identified as African American or Black, 6,000 Hispanic or Latino, 17,000 Asian, and 900 as American Indian or Alaskan Native. 400 received special accommodations in 2011, which I felt was a very low number. And as I was sitting there, we were discussing the fact that perhaps that might be whatever their standards are, perhaps we could use their standards, because I feel like we feel, if we had to sort of anecdotally guess, that would be a higher number. So if that's only 0.5%, one would think that we should have a number like that in our school. So that's an interesting statistic. That number actually went up in 2011. In 2009 and 2010, it was about 300. These are all numbers that are sort of rounded off just for data. Yeah.
Is the data on the breakdown by ethnicity about the same as it's been in the past? If you translate that into
all of them are increased slightly.
Okay.
Some of them are a little bit more increased than others. Asians were increased more, but most of them were a bit increased. Test scores, very similar from year to year. So they showed a graph, and it was almost the exact same graph on top of itself. So this is comparing 2010 to 2011, the average total score. Does everyone know how the MCATs work? There's 3 sections, each one is 15. So it's 15, 15, 15 for a score of 45. The average total score across the country of those 85,000 in 2010 was 25.0, and in 2011 was 25.1. The average in the physical science section, so there's 3 sections, the physical science section, the biological science section, and verbal reasoning. Those are the numbers. So basically all 8s in most of the sections. So 8.3 to 8.4, 8.8 to 8.8, and 7.9 to 7.9. So verbal reasoning being the lowest average score nationally. Yes.
That doesn't get you within 5 miles.
Correct. Okay. So they started a panel in 2008. They just developed a group, an advisory group, a 21-member panel, and they called themselves the MR5, which is sort of reviewing the MCATs for the 5th time ever. And they initiated their work in 2008, and the panel of 21 people was made up of a lot of different stakeholders: medical school admissions deans, deans in general, student affairs, diversity officers, basic and clinical science faculty, pre-health advisors, 1 student and 1 resident. And that group has been meeting since 2008 on a very regular basis. They sent out
approximately 3,000 surveys to other stakeholders. So many to admissions officers, admissions deans, and to pre-health advisors across the country for colleges and post-bac. And a very representative group. And what they were charged with doing, this committee of 21, is to rethink the MCAT. The current MCAT has been in place since 1991, and they want to make it a better tool. They believe that it is a very, very good tool, so they do not want to blow it up, but they want to revise it, improve it, make it sort of more current. They will have a new MCAT exam that will be introduced in 2015, and I will get into details about that. The new version will be in place from 2015 to 2030. Yes?
Just to say that in 2009, we were one of the schools that received a survey, and there were literally dozens of our faculty and students who filled it out. So just to reinforce what you're saying, which is they collected an insane amount of data from every single level, first to fourth year students and all kinds of teaching faculty from the social sciences to the basic sciences. It was very, very complex.
This was not fly by night in any way. I mean, this committee, started in 2008, and from the presentations, it was clear that a lot of thought and a lot of surveying and a lot of data and a lot of analysis and all different stakeholders in the room. So there was a lot of attention. I mean, for me, I guess when Jess and I left that meeting, I felt a bit excited to have this new knowledge. So, after 3 years of work, the MR5 committee has made its final recommendations on changes to the MCAT exam, and this is what they're going to do. They're going to add a section. There's going to be an additional section, and I'll get into more detail, that includes content from psychology, sociology, and introductory biology around behavior. So biology was already in, but biology around behavior. So a new section. So instead of 3 sections, there's going to be 4 sections. So this is about psychology and sociology. And the pre-health advisors get very anxious because I think the college kids get very anxious. What exactly does that mean? What do I need to take to know that content? The MR5 committee believes that a high percentage of the students are already taking the classes that they need for this content. And it's basically an introductory psych course and an introductory sociology course. They are going to add content from biochemistry. So the first big change is the new section on behavior, sociology, and psychology. The second big change is the addition of content from biochemistry. And the third big change is the elimination of the writing sample. So for people who are not familiar with the current MCAT, it's 3 sections that I outlined plus a written sample. So our average MCAT for the entering class that just entered was 35 out of the 3 sections, and our average writing samples always are Q, R. Oh, party on. Okay. So one of the things that all of the people said in this, many of the people, a high percentage of admissions personnel said that they ignore the writing sample. So I wouldn't say that we actually totally ignore the writing sample. Okay, so let's go into more detail about the MR5 and the 4 sections. This is a description of them. The biological and biochemical foundations of living systems. So that's the addition of biochemistry, which again had not been a prereq previously. Chemical and physical foundations of biological systems, so that's chemistry and physics. Critical analysis and reasoning, that's the verbal section. And this is the 4th section, psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior. Again, content from psychology and sociology. And they discuss trying to test and emphasize the behavioral and socio-cultural determinants of health in this section. They said that sort of spread out through all 4 sections is going to be tests on research methods and statistics. So instead of being factoid questions where you have to just regurgitate a fact, there's going to be sort of paragraphs where you have to have some statistics and some research methodology information and knowledge that will allow you to analyze the questions and answer them correctly. So we have now added biochemistry, psychology, sociology, statistics, and perhaps epi. Okay? Yes? No. not in the reading that I've done or the meeting that I went to. Did they? No. More passage questions and less factoid questions. Okay. So as I said, it will be introduced in 2015. There will be an optional unscored section that will reflect the new section starting in 2013. When asked how are you going to get students to do it, they said, I don't know, or we don't know, or good question. So they're going to have to pay them.
Yeah, they said they're working on thinking of ideas that would entice the students to stay for an extra, 2 hours to do this optional piece that'll give them information.
Which will give them information on how it's scored and sort of, we've all gone to tests where there was a very weird question and you thought to yourself, well, that was probably a new one they're trying to test out, right? The length of the test now is 5.5 hours. Starting in 2015, it's going to be 7.5 hours.
So just a comment about that, because everybody got really nervous about this. Is this going to be a big deal, the whole thing? So what I didn't know is that it used to be 7.5 hours long, and then it got shorter. So now going back, it's not going to be a big deal, supposedly.
There's going to be a lunch. There's going to be a lunch break. So I guess it's okay. So there's going to be a lunch break added, and the whole they're going to take care of them, I guess, in this added time, because that seems like a work day, right?
Will it cost more for students to get it?
That they didn't say, did they?
The cost is not going up significantly, and they did actually spend some time talking about the financial aid that they do offer. I don't have that data at my fingertips. The second section after the MCATS meeting that we went to was on AMCAS. So maybe tell everyone what MCAS is. They might not know. And then just
do you guys know what AMCAS is? It's so the acronym, it stands for American Medical College Application Service. So basically, that's the national application that all applicants to medical school in the U.S. have to fill out to apply to medical school, right? And then most schools, if not all, have a secondary application that asks school-specific or institution-specific questions. So as you can see, this is the first time since 2001 that they're actually looking at it to try and make changes to the application itself. And to me, it didn't seem like they were making drastic changes. So I guess it works, or at least they think so. They didn't do as much testing and data collecting as they did for the MCAT. So what they're changing is the disadvantaged section of the application. There were questions that were, I guess, buried down deep a few layers. After you answer one question, then you go to another and another to get to these questions. So they're bringing those up front to the applicants so that they can answer this question better, I guess. And currently, once you self-identify as disadvantaged, there's a brief essay that you write. They're keeping that to explain why you think you should be described as disadvantaged. Another change that actually makes a difference for me, now they're requiring applicants to provide information about their parents or guardians. This is important for us because we look at it. I don't know if all schools look at it, but it makes a difference to know that, there is a parent in their life, that what their background is, that kind of thing. We take that into consideration when we're looking at the holistic view of an applicant, kind of where they came from.
It's their first generation college.
Right.
So if this is the first kid in the family to go to college, we consider that fairly significant. Things like that.
Yeah, and right now when there is no parent information, it's kind of like, where you came from somewhere. So, yeah.
Just out of curiosity, what percent of applications do not write down anything for the parents section? It seems like they almost always do, or maybe it's my...
I would say 5%.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, it's a small number.
There are people who will write that they have considered themselves independent, and then we'll talk about that with respect to sort of having work. But it adds to, you want to know if there's pressure to work during school and they're juggling school and work, and so things like that are we really do look at it, so it is helpful.
Yeah.
And we don't know, that's our population, right? So given
right.
age, how many many thousands of
Good
students
point.
apply. We don't know.
Good point.
Maybe we just have good kids who are filling it out more than others.
Right. So along those lines also, there's an expanded occupational and educational categories associated with the parent guardian information.
Actually, so these are changes that they made for this current cycle.
Right.
And I actually think that they, you start to see things. I think they must have taken doctor or physician away and just have added surgeon. Everyone now is
physician surgeon.
It says physician surgeon. So last year it just said physician. So now you think everyone is a surgeon. I have had a lot of interviewers say, well, you have a parent's a doctor. Oh, so your father or mother is a surgeon. And they say, no, she's a radiologist or whatever. So sometimes there's weird little not important consequences of the drop-down menu that make you have a skew in your interview that's not actually true. So I noticed that.
Yeah. So another thing that changed this year, actually, which after we started reviewing applications, we realized, is that now in the work activity section, there's a maximum of 15 experiences that can be entered. So the new thing is now you have to provide a contact for that activity, which is good in case, a question comes up or you think maybe they didn't really do what they said they did or something like that, or just you want to know more, something like that. Now we can actually reach out to those people that they worked with or had that experience with. So then this new part also is they're asked to identify up to 3 experiences that they consider most meaningful. Now, we didn't really know what to do with this because it seemed like we didn't realize that there were 3, right? So we were like, how could all these things be most meaningful experience to you? But they're asking them to consider it, what was transformative for you? How did it impact you and how did it add to your personal growth, right? So that kind of makes sense, right? You kind of want to know how that activity affected you in your, so.
There's a small box on the MCATS application. And it's a good addition. We've used it, I think, in both ways. Sometimes something seems like it shouldn't be necessarily. They didn't do it for very long. That's a little bit almost like they're fishing for things that were transformative, and perhaps they didn't have that much of a robust extracurricular life or service life or research life. And then also you can really see what's important to them, which of course is important.
And then this last initiative that changed this year I thought was interesting, and I think it's because of the new technology age and how you can actually pull down, people actually write essays for you. You can go, if you didn't know, you can go on the web and get an essay written for you. So now they have to certify that all written passages are their own and have not been written in whole or in part by a third party. So I think that was interesting, which, you kind of think that they should be, right? But now they have to say so.
That image from The Sopranos, where one of the family members taking a financial advisor exam.
Oh.
That saying ends in a vowel, but the guy taking the exam is an Asian.
Oh my. So yeah, something along those lines.
Do they have any clarification for people who would pay the advisors in terms of editing some of the statements and checking the grammar and everything? Because that's always the situation. Some people don't.
With respect to having other people?
Yeah.
No, they're fine with that. It was just certifying that you actually wrote it.
Yeah.
So, as Jeff said, the AMCAS sort of changes that currently went into place were not that, they were good, but they didn't seem, except for the transformative experience, I think they weren't such huge changes. However, it does seem that they are trying to think about how to make this application, and of course it's the one that all students fill out for all schools, a better application. And this doesn't seem like a committee that is yet really formed or really doing work yet, but just sort of up here in sort of the germ stage of things. They want to have standardized letters. I think they feel that, they're comparing sort of apples to oranges sometimes. And that if they could have a standardized letter of recommendation for people, it might allow the admissions committee to sort of be able to compare more easily. What was the feedback? Was there any
the feedback from both the pre-health advisors and the admissions people was that they were okay with the standard. They liked the standardized letter.
That week, the health professional, let's
about that.
Advisors who thought this was a horrendous idea.
Really?
And it turned out the personality that, you really couldn't get the student's essence through if you had to.
Well, I wouldn't say that the AAMC has a huge amount of pre-health advisors, right? The AAMC has more admissions people. I mean, I met pre-health advisors, but there was more like a handful than so perhaps it's just I think that's a good point. And they're trying to work on a section that will ask the applicants to reflect on experiences that somehow demonstrate their personal characteristics. That's kind of their goal. And they don't really say how they're going to operationalize that. And then with respect to the sort of having another tool, almost like an MCAT, they want to have a tool, an instrument that will screen for a core set of personal competencies. And this was the group of competencies that they discussed. Some sort of a tool that will get at integrity and ethics, reliability, dependability, service orientation, social and interpersonal skills, teamwork capacity for improvement, resilience and adaptability, cultural competence, and oral communication skills. And, right, I know. It's all good, but yeah, let's, the details. Right. So what kind of tool will this be? They didn't go into that. And it seems more like they realize they need to do more, and they realize that there's a whole set of things that they want to be able to say a person is great at that they're not really getting at, but they don't really seem to know how they're going to do that yet.
So there was no discussion of the MMI?
So at the admissions, right, so that was the MCAT session. So there was the MCAT section, the MCAS section, and then there was these town halls. And the town halls were all about the MMI. So for people who don't know, schools seem to be pushing instead of what we do, which is that we have 2 30-minute interviews with a faculty or a voluntary faculty or a full-time faculty or a student with the applicants. We have two interviews per applicant. Many of the schools, which seems to be sort of the vocal minority at these town halls, because if you look at the data, it's small. It's about 15%. But if you went to this town hall, you'd think that it was like 85% of people are doing some sort of a structured interview that is more reliable and more valid than just interviewing. Because if I interview someone and just interview someone, it might very well be that we have the same interview and have very different outcomes and different impressions, and so it's not necessarily a good or reliable tool. On the other hand, the very structured interviews, which are more reliable, can have some negative connotation, can make the applicant feel perhaps negatively towards so much structure in an interview, and you are doing some recruiting when you're interviewing. So you're trying to screen the applicant, and then you're doing recruiting, and the percent of recruiting versus screening that you do probably depends on who you are to a certain degree. Right? If you're leadership of the med school, I have been told that there should be 5 minutes of screening and 25 minutes of recruiting, and one could argue that probably the balance is somewhere about even or so. But anyway, these schools that are doing this MMI or multiple mini interviews went into great detail about it, and the schools that are not listened and were interested. The most probably the point of view that I thought was the take-home message was actually by the Boston University Dean of Admissions, who said, clearly we need to have more reliable tools. The MMI is under the umbrella of these tools, and it's one that can be used, but it's not the only one. And I think it became sort of the flavor of the week, the way in med-ed, PDL became, I think sometimes it became like the one thing that everyone's going for, and I think it was important to have us go back and think, okay, we want to be more reliable, we want to have more valid screening methods, but that is one tool in many. And that was sort of the whole focus of the town hall meeting. Just so that we're all on the same page and you know what I'm talking about, the development started in 2001 of this sort of tool called the MMI. And the formal inception was in 2004 in Canada at McMaster University. And basically there are many short independent assessments sort of typically in a time circuit that maybe lasts 8 to 10 minutes, and you have like 8 to 10 stations. And you are testing a domain at a station. So examples of domains might be professionalism or communication or ability to collaborate, And they're it seems as if it's a big commitment to write the STEM, the probing questions for the interviewer, come up with a scoring sheet, and sort of implement it. So one of the things I was worried, it seems that the schools that have it have a fair amount of space, do maybe a little less interviews than we do, but many of them do very many. We do 800 in a year. It seems like there were schools that did 600, 700, so not a minimal amount. You have to have a lot of technological support, and sort of jumping off the cliff, you need a lot of preparation, right? Because you need to have these sessions, these questions that reflect upon a quality that you're looking for. You have to write them, and you have to think about them, and you have to test them, and you have to train the people on them. So I think it was very educational for me to hear what other people thought. I think a number of the things that came up were this thing about sort of a personal what we were just saying a little bit about the AMCAS application, that you want to get at that personal part, or the letter, excuse me, we were saying about the letter. A number of people in the room said, I don't buy it, I want to have that interview. Some people in the room said, we just don't have the support to do it, the time, the space, the technology support. Some people said, we want to have a structured interview, but we're going to add some structure to our regular interviews. We're not going to do the MMI. I think at the end of the day, it's definitely worth considering and doing, learning more and seeing. Yeah.
Is there any discussion about a concern that the more consistent and standardized something like that is, the more quickly applicants will figure out?
They said that doesn't happen. They said that in really robust testing, 2004 is a long time ago, so they've been fairly well tested, and they felt that they talked about sort of gender, race, socioeconomic status, or sort of figuring out as the four things that they were concerned about, that perhaps there was, are we being fair and equal, and could people who have already gone through it, or maybe your uncle went through it. One thing that they did say is that if you have one dean gave an example, I think he was from Cincinnati, of you're not allowed to have a family member of a person who's read the STEM and read the question and read the questions that come from it interview. And then all of a sudden he realized that the son of one of his main people who he had trained had just gone through it. And he thought to himself, how am I going to tell my admissions committee this? And it turned out that this is an N of 1, that the son tanked it. So they seemed fairly confident in actual real studying that there wasn't a bias towards people who might have heard sort of what the questions are already.
Actually, this is a plug. April 11th, Kelly Dorr, who is the lead author on several of these from his master's, coming to talk on this and other measures of how to interview candidates.
Oh, good.
There's a lot in the residency level as well.
Yeah.
You can stake it. I mean, it's like any option. They can stake it for the MMI. They're probably good enough. Right? I mean, it's hard to. It doesn't matter what the content is. If you can't have a reasonable conversation with somebody that you walk into the room and meet for the first time and establish rapport within 5 minutes, it doesn't matter what content it is. You're never going to be able to do it. And I'm not sure what else they talked about in April here.
Again, this was a town hall. It wasn't a content session.
Data about it. I mean, just like the MCAT.
Yes, predictive value on USL, on
This has predictive validity towards, or at least the Canadian version of the
clinical
skills.
Yep. Yep.
I don't know if they've gotten data on its correlation with USMLE. I know they have correlations with the Canadian level, but not the.
No, I believe that they have. Yeah. But again, there wasn't a content session on this, and I think that the head of the AAMC admissions group was almost surprised at sort of the amount of information the admissions people wanted. It became like, the town hall could start in any direction. It started on MMI and it never left it. So clearly, at the next meeting, I bet it's going to be a huge topic, because I think people feel like, am I not going in the direction I should be going? Am I not doing what I should be doing? When in actuality, the number of schools in this country doing it is not so great, but perhaps we should be. So I think there was a lot of sort of educate me, what should we do, what do you think, and a lot of discussion. It's less than I thought. I feel that this is a lot, but I think it's 500. I just, because of my boards, which are much more than that, I kind of thought it was going to be more. So I have sticker. And they talk a lot about fee waivers.
AMCAS is 75.
I think that's correct. And then there's like they give you a certain
85,000.
Yeah.
I know. How much money have they made?
Where is that?
It's an expensive test to develop. Very, I mean, the test.
I know, I understand that.
The MCAT.
But
No.
The MCAT, it's the same with the USMLE. And we talked about cost per item of $2,000 or $3,000 per item to develop.
Right.
So they're really well developed and well researched questions. This test one is
They've been made at
a lot of money. That's why they give money to create foundations for the national board. That's why they had to go create frameworks.
I just want to thank Valerie, Jess, and Marty for